Hey, welcome. Avengers. I played Avengers. Marvel's Avengers. The game, the closed beta for PS4 came out, so I played it basically all weekend. I got each character up to level 15 because I enjoyed it. Despite my concerns for the game, I actually had a really good time with it. I've never really played too many looter shooters, so once I realized that it was just kind of Destiny with a Marvel skin over it, I was like, oh no. But I actually really enjoyed it, and I think a lot of that has to do with it having the Marvel skin. But anyway, I decided I would review the beta. I don't think it's going to change over the next couple weeks. I think some of my concerns will be quelled by playing it on PC, which is the platform that I am eventually going to buy it on. But this is the status of the PS4 closed beta I will talk about now. So, for like a general overview of the beta and how the beta was constructed, it's essentially just an earlier build of the game with 3 story missions in it, and then a handful of the co-op war zones and drop zones, just the different types of co-op missions in the game. So it starts out with those 3 story missions. The first one is A-Day, which is like half an hour of a very just single player focused story mission. And then after that, there are 2 Hulk/Kamala Khan missions where you are recovering Jarvis, and it ends with fighting Abomination as the Hulk. So that was fun. After that, like I said, it opens up to a bunch of the multiplayer missions. You have, drop zones, war zones, and a vault, and there's varying degrees of that. One of them has a big boss fight, etc. There's enough variety in the content to where I didn't really feel bored at any point in the beta, so that was good. You also get some free credits to use in the marketplace for things like emotes and skins that I guess they just wanted that there to let you kind of get a feel for how the marketplace and how the cosmetic system is going to work, which I thought was fun. I didn't actually end up buying too many cosmetics and stuff because, it's not going to matter. This stuff isn't being carried over to the real game. There are some things that are being carried over, like beta rewards, just like nameplates and stuff that you could get for completing the beta, but it's nothing like too crazy. So anyway, usually how I structure my reviews is I talk about the stuff that I liked about the thing and then the bad stuff. So let's start with the good, starting with the combat, which feels really good to me, honestly, especially when it comes down to Captain America, Black Widow, and Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. They are for sure my favorites in the game. Iron Man also feels really fun, especially his flying and his different range types. He has the missiles, the repulsors, and the lasers. I really like the lasers for combat, like ground attacks, but the repulsors are really good for flying around and shooting things. Didn't quite get the hang of missiles, though. Now, Hulk is really the only one that I felt wasn't that great to play as. I just can't seem to get the hang of his abilities and his intrinsic ability, which is Rage, which I think is the integral part of his playstyle, because he kind of dies really quickly if you're not like perfect with your Rage parries and using Rage to recover health, or willpower as it's called in this game. So I'm guessing he just doesn't fit my playstyle, whereas the others in the beta, especially Widow and Kamala and Cap, for the little amount of time I got to play as him in A-Day, fit my playstyle way better. Iron Man I can play as my playstyle, but he is a lot more gimmicky. Not gimmicky, but like he's more different than the type of characters that I like to play, which are very like combo focused and takedown focused, which Widow and Kamala, and I imagine Cap are that's where they shine. So yeah, another reason that I really liked Cap and Kamala in this were that their animations complemented their playstyles really well. So you've got like Cap's quick shield throws, which look really good when they're coupled with his melee attack. Just you punch someone and you're knocking them around, and then there's another guy to the left of you, so you throw your shield at him really quick. It reminded me, funnily more so than Thor, it reminded me of the way I felt when I was playing the new God of War, the PS4 God of War, where you would like punch up a bunch of guys and then throw your axe at someone and run at them with your fists and knock the living hell out of them. It felt really good. I really think Cap is probably going to be one of my favorites when the game comes out. And I probably will end up liking Thor for similar reasons, if they can get him feeling more like, Kratos and God of War with Mjolnir and stuff. But I don't know, it might be different. That's going to like because Cap's shield always comes back to him. With Mjolnir, you can do the same like axe stuff, where you throw the axe and then it comes back and hits people on the way back. But I don't know. I feel like Cap is just faster from, Cap and Thor weren't in this beta, but Cap just felt faster than Thor in general from the little I got to play with him. And I like fast characters. Speaking of, Black Widow, also super fun for similar reasons as Cap. She's really fast. Her focus on like quick kind of light attacks that have heavy stun damage, which leads into takedown combos, is great. I would also kind of compare her to Kratos in the PS4 God of War, just his fists. How they like build up the stun meter a lot when you're just using his fists as opposed to his axe. That's kind of Black Widow. I almost never used her heavy attacks in my playstyle because I liked just kicking people off of their feet and punching them up and getting their stun meter down, and then using a takedown ability on them, because that also heals you when you do takedown abilities, so that was great. So as far as the gameplay loop in general, it seems fun. I haven't really played a lot of live service looter shooters before this, so I'm not super familiar with that gameplay loop. I also definitely won't have a full opinion on the gameplay loop until it comes out for real, but I can see myself enjoying it from what I've played. But I think the main reason that I didn't like, Destiny, Diablo, and stuff like Borderlands to that extent is just I don't really care about the world and environments in that. It wasn't the gameplay loop that I was annoyed with. It was more the world and the environments and stuff like that. But this is Marvel, and I really like Marvel, so that's gonna get me into it. We also got to see a few bosses in this beta, this build. There's not a whole ton of them. There's a lot of mini bosses that they show us, but in terms of like big bosses, we get, I think, Taskmaster in A-Day, Abomination in the third story mission, and then the AIM Warbot, this big Warbot guy that you can do in one of the co-op missions. And they're pretty good. The only one I really didn't like was Abomination, because he just kind of felt like you were just beating on him as Hulk, and there wasn't a lot of like nuance and there wasn't much that you had to actually do. It didn't feel like a fun puzzle fight, and it didn't feel like a fun like skill check of if you're actually good at the game. It just kind of felt like you were mashing buttons until he dies. But I just think those types of fights feel bad to play, and they kind of look bad to watch. I think the Warbot and the Vault puzzle are great examples of group encounters. I think that's the direction they're going to go in with group encounters, and Taskmaster is a really fun single-player boss fight, because you just fight him as Black Widow. I really hope, based on that Taskmaster fight, that they introduce raids later on that split the team up, and each player gets to fight their own boss at the same time as sort of a skill check for the party in like a big, raid type deal. I think that would be a really cool way to bring the more challenging single player boss fights into the multiplayer, because obviously if you have one encounter, one enemy that you're fighting, a big boss, either it has to be something massive like the Warbot, where it's technically like a bunch of different enemies, it's legs and stuff that you're fighting, or it has to be like Abomination, which, everyone just smacking on one enemy at the same time just looks bad and isn't very fun. So yeah, I think that would be a cool way to get around that. Something else I want to talk about, and I initially wrote it down as a criticism, but after playing it more, it became a positive, is the difficulty in this game. I initially thought it was pretty shallow, just, inflating the damage that enemies do and the health that they have, but after toying around with it toward the end of the beta weekend, it's actually really well done. It surprised me. So basically, each difficulty level on a mission changes the enemy level relative to your current power. So basically, the harder difficulty, the more advantage the enemies have in terms of power level. But it also changes the actual encounters, so you get more waves of harder to defeat enemies. It's not just, enemies have more health and hit more. And also on top of that, loot is better. And I couldn't tell if this were true at first because they don't explicitly tell you this, but it absolutely is. Loot is definitely better when you're playing on harder difficulties. For example, I was only ever able to get a legendary, a yellow item, through a mission on its hardest difficulty. I was only getting greens and sometimes blues and purples on, the normal Challenge 2 or even Challenge 3 missions. Also, just in general, this game gets way more fun and way more enthralling on the harder difficulties when you have to juggle a bunch of stuff. Like, when I was playing the Warbot mission, in the first encounter, there's one of the times, I didn't record this, but one of the times I was playing it as Black Widow, and there were like 3 of the big, like, dreadnought warbot things that were just fighting us. It was crazy. So yeah, good times. I really like playing these on the brutal / the challenge 4 difficulty. This is kind of a weird positive that I noticed and wrote down. The rumble in this game, like the rumble on the controller, is really well done, at least during A-Day. The controller, it was basically constantly rumbling in a really cool way, and it added a lot. I feel like rumble is kind of slept on, and in A-Day at least, it was used really well here. So yeah, use more rumble in your games. I don't know. Something I talked about in the Spider-Man Auram's forum I did on Spider-Man coming exclusively to PlayStation was I had concerns about future characters taking too long or having lower fidelity than the base games because, you know, the base game's characters have a lot of complexity and depth to them. And those concerns have been a little bit alleviated after actually playing the characters. That's not to say that they're less complex than I initially thought. It's just that now that I've seen every system that they have put onto these characters, I can see how most superheroes can cannibalize those systems with slight tweaks to include them. Specifically with, like, Spider-Man's web swinging. This is something that people had brought up to me before I even made that video, is that Miss Marvel and Black Widow both have things that are basically web swinging, and that's true. That's their grappling system, where Kamala, you know, swings with her embiggened hand, and Black Widow has a grappling hook, and that system works pretty well. It's pretty freeform, and it lets you do enough that doesn't feel like you're on rails, and it doesn't feel janky when you are kind of going against the grain and unintended path of where it wants you to grapple to. So, you know, that kind of that alleviates my main concern about Spidey not having good enough feeling web swinging. That being said, that grapple system doesn't let you swing from anything that you want. It still has to be grappleable terrain. So Spider-Man's still going to feel a little bit more on rails than I would like him to, probably, but still, concerns have been slightly alleviated in that respect. Another thing I liked is that the cosmetics shown so far are pretty cool. It shows promise for future ones. Just generally, I like to see when devs are not afraid to completely redesign a character while maintaining their silhouette. You know, the costumes here are just, they're more than palette swaps, which I like. That's what I want to see, because that means we're going to get some cool costumes. And if this game is going to make a lot of money from its cash shop, then, you know, you want to have stuff that you feel is worth your money, even though they have a cash shop and they're selling it for $60 at launch. But, you know, it is what it is. And the last positive I'm going to talk about is the story, because, man, the story is actually, it seems really engaging. I don't know, I didn't know if I cared from the trailers, but because of Inhumans and all of that, and MODOK, I don't care that much about MODOK. He's fun, but, you know, AIM, dime a dozen supervillain group, but just the chemistry between the Avengers that we saw in 8A and the other 2 story quests, it seems fun. I'm definitely probably the most interested in the story at this point, and just kind of playing around with the combat. But yeah, I don't know how they're gonna handle it for the most part. I hope AIM and MODOK aren't the villains for the entire lifespan of this game. I'm hoping that what they adopt is more of like a story arc classic comic book format, where like the first season of the story, probably the story that's packaged with the game at launch, that's the AIM story arc. But once they start to introduce more story, that's like, you know, issue 7 of the comic, where the new story arc starts, and now it's not AIM, it's Ultron or Hydra or whatever, you know, something that's different enough from AIM, but still allows them to not have to develop entirely new systems for the game. Okay, so that's a lot of what I liked about the game. I'm sure there's more that I just didn't think of, but now let's get into the bad stuff I didn't like, some stuff that I knew I wouldn't like, and some stuff that I didn't even know was a thing. Anyway, my main complaint thus far has been the matchmaking, which is real bad. Most of my time playing has been single player with the AI companions, and that's mostly because A, it's nearly impossible to get matchmaking working, and B, when you do, depending on the mission, everyone just kind of goes off in their own direction and doesn't team up like, you know, the Avengers would. I had one match where I was able to actually play with other people, like random people, and it took 6 minutes to find people, and it took forever to like actually load into the match. And once we did, everyone just split off in different directions. There's like no communication system, at least on the PS4 version, so I just kind of had to deal with that. We ended up doing the mission fine, but anyway, I think a lot of this will be fixed with time. It just feels bugged right now, the matchmaking, and I know the dev team has said that it is kind of an issue that they're working on. And the second thing, with people just splintering off, players will learn more what to do in these missions over time as well, just kind of like dungeons and MMOs that have multiple paths. You go here first, then you do this, blah blah blah. And another buggy thing that I assume will be fixed come launch is the UI, just kind of in general, just everywhere, not just the menus, but like the HUD as well. Status effect tooltips, they would almost never show up. The background of certain menu elements like skill trees also wouldn't load, stuff like that, just weird beta kinks that I'm sure will be fixed come launch, but they were pretty annoying, especially those tooltips, because there's a lot of helpful information in those tooltips that just sometimes I wouldn't see. In fact, I didn't even know that was a thing for like my first 4 hours of gameplay, where I just didn't see any tooltips and suddenly they were there, and I was like, oh, that's super helpful. But yeah, just weird beta kinks. Here's the thing that's not a weird beta kink though, enemies being pretty difficult to see in some of the open world missions, the war zones. Usually I will hear my character shout enemies or something, but either they haven't loaded in yet, or I can't see them. They're somewhere around me that, I haven't seen yet. I just wish doing like the ping thing where you see mission objectives also highlighted enemies, or at least brought up, some kind of radar or like an arrow that pointed you. You only see an arrow that points near where the enemies are if they're actively shooting at you. But, the encounter can technically begin if they're out of range of you and they won't shoot at you. So, I don't know, it's strange. A radar, I feel like, would just help this immensely, especially in cases where there's like one enemy running around still and you have no idea where he is, so you're just scrambling to find him. Stuff like that. I don't know, it would help. Add a radar of some kind. Here's another bigger complaint, the gear system. I kind of hate it, but probably not for the reason that you would expect. The main reason I don't like the gear system is because I always prefer gear systems that cosmetically change over the ones that are just purely stat-based. So the way that they decided to go with cosmetics in this game is more of a full overhaul like costume/skin system, but they also have the piece-by-piece gear system, so it was just a strange thing where usually when you have a gear system that does relate to physical elements on your character, like Miss Marvel's insignia or her bracelets, her bracers, or anything like that, you would have the gear actually physically change the appearance of your character, but the appearance of your character is just down to the skin, and that will never change based on your gear. And I kind of wish there was more synergy there. Like, maybe even just something small, like certain items give like a slight color change, or a particle effect or something. Just something that shows that your gear is actually physically affecting your character in terms of appearance, as opposed to just stat-based, which you can't have be physically reflective. It would also make each hero feel more unique to you, which is another problem, because the skins are just, you get this skin or this skin. You can't like mix and match them. I wish you could take like the hat of this skin and the shirt of this skin, like combine them, stuff like that. But I know that's just a different system, but that's what I would want. I don't know, they could still have this system where you have full sets that you can wear. Like if you want the classic Miss Marvel costume, you just get all of that gear and maybe put it in a cosmetic slot as opposed to your gear slot if you outlevel it with other gear and stuff like that. I just don't know why they went this way with a multiplayer game where you're gonna want to personalize your character. They decided that you can only wear this specific skin, and you have to have gear that doesn't affect your appearance at all. I want more customization. And the gear system is not allowing that. There also is a lot of complexity in the gear, like the actual attributes of the gear. There's a lot of min-maxing potential with power levels and stats and all this stuff that, I don't know, it seems a little overly complex. I was really exhausted looking at it at the start of the beta. I was a little more okay with it at the end of it, and I'm sure like after you play the game for like a week, it'll all be second nature. But I don't know, does there need to be like 12 million stats with each piece of gear? There's just a lot going on sometimes. Then I also had just a couple more complaints that I'm sure will either get patched up with the beta or moving to PC or, next gen, which this game will have a patch for next gen. The frame rate, it's almost never locked to 60, at least when I was playing it. The only times I ever got it to run a smooth 60 was when I was in a small room with no enemies around. The second an enemy came on the screen, it dropped drastically. And I was playing on a PS4 Pro with the high performance setting enabled, so I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know if the game just isn't optimized or if this is just as good as it's gonna get because of older hardware at this point, but the whole game pretty much chugged anytime I was playing it. Even the UI, like the menus at some points, was like really slow. But yeah, this will obviously be fixed on PC because PC is just, stronger. Better hardware, unless you have like a potato, in which case probably get it on console. But these are just things that'll be solved with better hardware, which whether that means PC or next gen, who knows. I'm sure next gen will at least solve the other complaint that I have about in this section is load times. Load times, they're a bit long, but again, that can easily be solved by PC and next gen, so I'm not gonna knock the game for having long load times right now, and they're not unbearable. Like, if you get this game on current gen consoles, you're gonna have these longer load times, and they're not terrible. They're not the worst things in the world, but they were notably long. Alright, and that mostly covers it. Overall, my expectations, they weren't blown away. Like, I'm not in love with this game now. I like it a lot, but it's just my worries and confusions about what the game actually were, they're completely gone now. I know what the game is, I know it plays pretty well, and I know it has a compelling enough story to make me want to buy it. So, I'm just honestly having a lot of fun playing missions and being an Avenger, especially when I'm just talking to some friends on Discord and just playing it in the background. It's a good time. It's a kind of turn your brain off and just hang out in the game time. And it also has that other side, the story, which I was actually pretty compelled by. So I wasn't paying attention to it too much because there was a lot of context that was taken out, and I wanted to actually sit down and experience the story by myself when the game comes out. This is definitely one of those situations where, time will tell how good the game will be. It's a live service game, so it could launch with no content, or it could launch with a ton of content. We'll just have to see. The future is going to tell how this game is looked back on, obviously, and how the game is received at launch. People keep asking me if I think the game is going to be successful, and honestly, I don't know. I would say yes, because it's Avengers, and it's a big new AAA Avengers game, but, there is a bit of, what's the word, Avengers burnout right now. The interest in it isn't as high as, say, 3-4 years ago, probably when this game started development. I think it's still going to be successful. I don't think it's going to set records or anything. It could. It has the potential to, but it's going to do pretty well, and I think it has a bright future ahead of it. I'm definitely going to play it. I feel like a lot of people that were down on it, including myself, have changed their minds after actually playing it, so yeah. At the end of the day, I will absolutely recommend this game if you like Marvel stuff in general, or just action games. I can't speak too much on it as a looter shooter, but it's probably worth checking out in that aspect too. If you just don't like co-op games, or you don't like action-based games where there is a certain amount of button mashing going on, it's probably not for you, but I will say there are characters that if you spend time with them, you can get a nuance down to them, and there's a lot more going on, especially if you play it on those harder difficulties. You can definitely just button mash your way through a lot of stuff on Challenge 1 or Challenge 2 missions, the easier difficulties, but once you rack it up to Challenge 4 and there's grenades all over the place, you gotta move around, you gotta use your abilities. It's crazy. But yeah, I definitely recommend it if you like Marvel stuff. Definitely recommend it if you like action games, looter shooters, whatever. It's a good time. The open beta for the PS4 is next weekend, this coming weekend, and then the open beta for everything is the weekend after that. So yeah, don't pre-order. I don't recommend pre-ordering ever. So if you want to try the game out and you don't have a PS4, just wait for next weekend. If you do have a PS4, wait for this coming weekend. and you can try it out, and then the game comes out. So get in while you can. I think this is definitely a game that will benefit from being able to try it before you drop money into it. So even if you just log in for an hour, see how it plays, get through the story missions, play a couple co-op ones, just play it for an hour or two, and see if it's your thing. If it's not, cool. There's a million other things in the world to play. And yes, I'm still angry that Spider-Man is PlayStation exclusive. Don't keep that. Bad. I'm happy knowing that there's plenty of other characters in this game that I will enjoy playing that aren't Spider-Man, though, so they can have him if they really want him. But it's still a stupid decision. Anyway, see you later.